Hello, my friend Melissa. It's so good to see you again.
Back at you, Kim. Nice to be in here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love when we get together for our conversations. We are friends, but we are also fellow health coaches. So we spend a lot of time together talking about all these issues that women are talking about. So
It's
what do
such
we?
a circle, isn't it? I
Yeah.
know. And we just got together recently. I mean, at least once a week we get together and meet for tea or coffee, depending on the time of day, right?
Exactly.
And this topic came up because it's just so relative to really ourselves, what we're going through and what we continue to hear from our clients or friends, not necessarily clients, it's just people in our lives. And something I thought about as before we hit record today is that obviously our focus is women in general. I know you help men and I've had some men clients in the past, but this is not just a woman's focus. This happens to all of us, but we're going to dive into why it's so different for us women, and hormones have a lot to do with that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think when we say the words brain fog, not everybody really understands that. That's a term that we as coaches have gotten used to because in the list of menopause symptoms, perimenopause symptoms, everyone lists it. It makes it quick and easy to just say brain fog. And I think you and I are going to talk about our experiences and our clients' experiences that really span so much broader than that term. And I think so many women, if you're listening, I think you are going to resonate with some of these other things that we're going to say that get looped under the term brain fog. And I will tell you why I think it's an important topic. Is I feel for women who are going through this experience, and it's very scary. And I remember feeling scared too. And as health coaches, we are not immune. You've heard, if you've been on this podcast with us, you have heard our gut issues. You've heard our other hormonal issues. You've heard it all. We are not immune. We just happen to be on the inside with information. So we're a little lucky. Yeah. We want to give it to you. So, yeah, I'd love, Melissa, because you and I talk about this offline. I'd love to hear more about what you have experienced, and not just like what actually happened, but emotionally, how has this affected you?
Yeah, I think the bottom line with this term, and we're going to be tossing it out there, brain fog, cognitive issues, right? Slow, just not being able to recall names, ideas, walking into a room and forgetting why, and it's like, why did I come in here? I think for me, because I've always, I'm very task driven, and that's just the way I'm built, I guess. That's the way. And this is something else too that I was thinking about, because I heard somebody the other day talking about how men and women's brains are different, and they are, because they tend to be. And this is just a general statement that men tend to be. They can just one thought. They can compartmentalize, whereas we have got just this folder full of things to, that's why we're good at multitasking. Not that that's good for, everyday practices, but that's just kind of how we're built. And that's the way I have been as well. So I've noticed with me, it was just free, I'm doing it right now. It's just frozen. It's just, I can't quite, the brain is working faster than what we can communicate. And recalling, I think the number one thing for me is recalling names. I tend to be better at numbers, which has always been my gift, but names, titles, and when you see somebody, you see somebody at least once a week, and then you're sitting talking, talking with somebody to refer about a friend or something, and then suddenly you're like, I cannot remember their name. I see their face. I can remember their husband's name, which is crazy, right? And it's just, I think that's the most frustrating thing. It's like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And I think for me as a business owner, it's been harder because, again, we're juggling even more when you are self-employed and you're wearing all the hats, and we're putting even more into that file folder of things to do and to remember and to recall. So I definitely noticed a difference. I can't necessarily remember when it started, I'll be honest. I'm assuming it was around hormonal changes. I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know as much about our hormonal changes, say 10 years ago. I know you and we continue to learn. And maybe that would have been easier and different. I don't know. But that's one of the things I know we're going to talk about today is ways that we can not prevent, because I think it's kind of circumvent it. It's just understanding that it may be happening and what's some things I can do to be prepared emotionally and just practically with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of similar experiences. I look back and I didn't know it was happening to me, and because I didn't know I was in perimenopause before, about 10 years ago, before I became a health coach. Also, we're only a year apart in our careers becoming a health coach. And before I became a health coach and I was teaching math was very automatic for me. It didn't, especially when you teach the same subjects. I taught algebra, geometry, algebra 2, at least 2 out of 3 of those for 13 years. So it was patterns are so part of my life. I'm a pattern person anyway, because having probably had anxiety throughout my life and not even knowing that, by the way, I felt like I relied on patterns and routines and structure. And I found when I couldn't quite pull some of those things out, or a vocabulary word, I also was a big reader. So I had what I thought was a big vocabulary. And when I know a very common word, but I couldn't pull it from my brain to my mouth, it was so frustrating. And I think emotionally it made me feel dumb. It made me feel like there was something really wrong with me.
Yes.
And I'm going to be honest with you. Throughout my life, have had insecurities about feeling smart enough in front of people anyway, or feeling like I had all the answers. I grew up having to kind of have all the answers. There was pretty high expectations of me. And so when I didn't have the answers, truly didn't have simple answers, it was hard. And then what I didn't also understand going into perimenopause is you can become so much more distractible. I'm going to call it ADD because I do feel like when I look that up, I was completely moving into that with perimenopause. My distractibility was out of control. So between forgetting things, but also being so highly distracted, my brain wasn't sticking on one subject. And you and I work on being in the present moment with our clients. We work on being where we are, and that was almost impossible. But the thing that really put me over the edge in my insecurity and sadness and worry about this is I remember talking to a colleague here in the office, one of the therapists, and I remember thinking, does she realize that I feel like I'm slurring my words? Literally slurring my words at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in a meeting. They said they never noticed. I'm glad I asked later. But my brain did not feel like it was even able to get it out. It felt like I had, this is what I know some women have told me too, literally felt like stroke type symptoms sometimes. And I know that sounds very drastic and so crazy. It didn't happen every day. It didn't happen all day. But when it happened, it was so noticeable because I was used to being a decently well-spoken person and a very detailed person. And I felt like I wasn't keeping up. And you talked about being a business owner. I was not keeping up with my tasks. That distractibility in my brain was so bad. I could not pick one idea and stick with it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Focus and concentration and decision making. That's something that I've mentioned. Because and again, it depends on the situation. There's definitely some decisions that are easier and more, just, automatic. But again, as business owners, what we do, just our flow of our system and how we work with people, there's decisions to be made around that. And just having the confidence one of the things I've learned is to slow down and to just sit on it a little bit longer. When it comes to these decisions, I think overall that has helped me. It just kind of takes the stress off of thinking that just because I used to make maybe decide things sooner, take action sooner, that it's okay to wait, and that's helped me on so many other levels of life, right? Not just the fact that it's something that I'm cognitively just trying to put my hands on.
Oh, I think that's great, and I think that helps for everyone, regardless of what stage of this you might be in. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this episode, because we could do 150 episodes over the next couple years together on every symptom of perimenopause. But this one spoke to us, both of us, and we know that what's scary for some people is if you have dementia and Alzheimer's in your family already, you start to look at it and think, oh my gosh, maybe this is something that's happening to me. And we are finding out so much information. We want to share so badly the things that you can do to not only feel better in this situation, but to prevent possible decline. And there's some things that we are doing that we want to share, because we're not absolute brain experts. We are not doctors who are complete hormone experts. We have studied a lot to be able to help women and explain the things that are going on. But personally, we know, and our clients, we're watching anecdotally what people are doing to help themselves. So we don't want to hide this. We want to share every little bit of it.
Yeah. Good point. It is something that humor, I'm going to do a little sidestep here. I think when we're in these situations, and it can feel frustrating when we can't come up with the words or remember, or just not feeling that focus that we need at that given time, it does help to just give yourself a little bit of, hey, it's okay, laugh your way through it. I know that's a hard thing to do, ladies, but it's just giving yourself that understanding that, okay, there are some things happening differently, and just to learn to kind of roll through it with a lot more grace. Because I think what happens is when that frustration can build, and that, I think, just leads to more frustration, and then I think it just puts too much stress on us in general, and that's definitely something we want to avoid. Another layer that I didn't even mention when I was first expressing my my history with this is also living with type 1 diabetes. So this, generally speaking, and this can apply for anybody, because too much sugar in the system is inflammatory. And the brain can get inflamed, and these functions and all that's happening when blood sugar is not in control. And that's whether you're managing an insulin-dependent diabetes like I am, or metabolic health, which again, I know, Kim, you and I both have, helped women in that space, and we continue to. And that's another thing that goes along with perimenopause. So everything's so connected. I love it when pieces of the puzzle are recognizable, and you're realizing that it all really does come back to the same source, the same root. But highs and low blood sugar have been known, and again, there's studies and there's science that proves this, does do some things to the brain. So this is something that my community is aware of, and it adds to that, another complication that I may feel one day. And again, it gives us motivation to take care of ourselves. But again, that's more stress, because we know what the outcome could be, all the other different complications that can come from blood sugar that is not kept in a happy place, a good A1C level. But that's something I've had a lot of lows. And obviously my diagnosis when I was 14, I was in DKA. I don't know what that number was when I was diagnosed. And these are things that we can't necessarily study, can we? Maybe we can get an MRI of the brain, and there's ways to kind of maybe really look. But we don't know what the before was, unless we made those choices to kind of look at it a little closer. But it's one of those things, it's just awareness, knowing that this is definitely part of that puzzle when we are aging with diabetes. and it, it just kind of adds to that burnout, that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of, oh my gosh, is there anything I can control with this disease? And that's what I'm seeing with my clients as well. I've experienced it personally, so these are thoughts that go through my own mind. And I'm, like you said, we're going to do what we can with our lifestyle to help prevent and to kind of circumvent all this.
Yeah, I'd love to go back to 2 points that you made. One of them is the humor, because when you can feel like you are able to have a little bit of fun with it. A friend of mine would be searching for a word and she'd say, I'm playing Word Find right now. And right. I would laugh out loud because I knew exactly what she was talking about. But I love that she was able to joke around and go with it. The other thing is you mentioning the blood sugar highs and lows, and it is so true, because when on my side of things, working with people who are dealing with extreme overeating, emotional eating, binge eating, feeling so out of control with food, blood sugar does play such a huge part in this. And we know that the sugar and over carbs and some of the things that they're putting into their bodies that are processing as sugar, it is affecting the brain. And then we loop in, another great point that you made was there's that stress. And we know that when we have stress, there's so many reactions that are happening. The cortisol spiking, which again can also change our blood sugar, but also just cortisol can shut us down. When we talk about fight or flight, freeze, all these things that can happen to us, that can also contribute to our brain function. So even though there's definitely a hormonal response, we have our whole body is working off of many hormones, and any of them that get affected at this point are affecting all the other ones, which can affect the brain. And I think the interesting thing is, I think we understand now what are the types of things that could be happening. So you probably have another list. When you are listening to this, please share this episode with somebody who's going through it so they know they're not crazy. Just give your friend the gift of knowing she's not crazy by forgetting things. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you think of more things that you have gone through, we want to hear about that. We want to put that out there so that women understand, and men, this is not something that is abnormal, but it is, and I don't want to say it's normal, because we can actually work on this. Saying it's normal means we're just going to let it ride and we're just going to ride out the wave here. It's what I'm saying is we have ways to talk about this now. And so, Melissa, I'm going to let you, because we both could go on for hours about the hormonal part, but I'd love for you to talk about during menopause, what's happening with the hormones that is really contributing to some of these brain issues.
Yeah, it's a good point. Both you and I are on hormone replacement therapy. We're advocates of it. This is another reason why, those estrogen receptors are throughout our body, including our brain cells, things we've both continued to learn and to experience. So this is interesting, because I've been on HRT for 5 years now. And so it's like, okay, if I hadn't been on HRT, would it be worse? Well, I'm assuming it would be, as far as my focus, my abilities, and the word finding and all the things that we're talking about. So I know it's helping. I know it's something that is improving what could have gone down more of a cognitive delay, with where I was. But in general, estrogen it helps. Estrogen helps to regulate the mood, and it does help with memory, focus, cognitive function. So when we enter this phase of life, perimenopause, and it's different for everybody, as we've both talked a lot about here on our shows, it's a hard thing to measure, I think. But I think, again, HRT, in general sense, and again, you have to work with a practitioner on this, it's not too early to start on HRT, but you got to look specifically at where you are hormonally and all of that. But I think one of the things I would have done differently is to maybe start on hormone replacement sooner. And I didn't know it at the time how all this would have come together a lot sooner. And then when I stack on diabetes, I'm realizing that I've got another piece of the puzzle that most women don't have, and not everybody lives with insulin dependent diabetes. So that kind of stacks on to the importance. So again, do your due diligence, ask these questions. But yeah, and so what do you think about HRT and as far as your timing with it, Kim?
Oh, I wish I had really dug into it earlier. As you and I were learning about it, because we both became very well versed in menopause to be able to help our client base. I grew up with someone who had breast cancer. My mom had breast cancer. She had other major health issues. She was told that might have been caused by the original estrogen she was on, which was the synthetic. It was not the bioidenticals that we're using now. We don't know for sure that is true. But, what we do know is that it was different. Her body was different. So, of course, my brain was always thinking also in the holistic terms of, I want to age naturally. I want to do all these things. Well, hormone therapy is natural. And when I really dug in and understood, there are 3 major hormones. We have, again, 50 hormones in the body that are all affected by this. But the 3 that really kick the thing off with menopause is estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And when I got tested for the first time, I was 0. I was 0 for estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone was just kind of low. So when we started playing with it, and I say playing with it because it is not a one and done. You don't just get a pill. Progesterone I was able to, 100 milligrams. And again, this is not for you to go to your doctor and say, this is exactly what I want. It's for you to get the testing done to know, because when you're missing 3 hormones out of 50 that are supposed to work together, like all the gears and everything in the car, then it really makes things very hard on your body. It's no wonder all these other things are out of whack. And for example, with the emotional eating, ghrelin and leptin, your hunger and satiety hormones, whether you're satisfied or not, those hormones get affected. So I felt I was even eating more, wanting more, craving more constantly during this time, not just from discomfort of the symptoms, but because my body truly was out of whack. But the reason why I wish I'd started earlier investigating is, again, when I got the right, I'm going to call it a cocktail. When I got the right cocktail, the right compounding, the right amount, which, by the way, still keeps changing because that's a whole nother thing. We went through a gut health series, and when my gut changed, the hormones absorbing differently. But it was a game changer in my mood, my stress levels, my cognition. I felt like I got my brain back. It saved my brain. We talk way too much online just about weight loss. We talk way too much online just about the menobelly. We talk way too much about how you can lose that menopausal weight. What else is going on in your body? Weight loss is the byproduct of all the things that we need to do lifestyle-wise that we'll talk about. But to answer your question, circle back around to that, I wish I had known more earlier, and because it takes a while to get everything lined up where you feel we're never meant to feel exactly like we did in our 20s, 30s, early 40s, but I was feeling like a functioning human being again.
Oh, wow. And that's not too much to ask, is it?
No. I just want to show up in the world and, not feel awful every day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, and it's interesting because I was prescribed my cocktail too, as we're calling it, estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, but I was never tested. So my practitioner at the time just heard, because they were more symptom based. And it's interesting because I remember talking more about the physical symptoms I was having with my doctor at the time and not the cognitive. Because again, I didn't know enough. I wasn't close enough to really how all this was connected to even have that conversation. So it's interesting because I hear, and again, in retrospect, I wished I had had my levels checked first because, and I'm sure I was low. I mean, I was in menopause. I was obviously in menopause. The cycles had stopped and all the other stuff was starting to add up, insulin resistance, weight gain, poor sleep, all the things. Well, and those are just the ones we talk about. But this one, and we were also just starting our businesses. So I think back to what we were doing and how we were feeling and what our day-to-day was like, just creating and growing a business. And,
yes.
And how it could have been more supported if our whole hormonal system was more supported. Again, we can't change what we didn't do. But it sure is nice to learn and reflect back and notice, that could have been why, X, Y, Z. That could have been why I made these decisions that I can look back at now and say, that wasn't, that could have been a better decision, in hindsight. So yeah, those are some things I can definitely relate to as well. It's just understanding, and we're big on advocating and asking these questions. I have many ladies right now. I have a group coaching circle that is coming together with some amazing women, and this is a hot topic. And it's interesting because it's not necessarily, nobody has necessarily said brain fog, but they say, I don't feel like myself again. I'm feeling scattered. I'm feeling like I can't put the day together. And let me tell you, when you are managing an organ, pancreas is something that we don't have access to anymore. So we are a human pancreas. So we have that added to it as well. So think about the decision making around that. And one of the things I'm noticing, and hearing from clients is that they don't trust their decisions even around their care and their dosing and their carb counting and exercise, whereas they used to be more confident with it. Now it's just starting to feel a little shaky. Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to go back to your first point of what we could have done differently. And, you're talking about starting the businesses. You and I started 2 businesses at the beginning. And I remember being completely overwhelmed with having Nourishing Soul Sisters and our each individual health coaching businesses. And back then, we were also focused on a very general health coaching. We hadn't really found the exact space that we both are in, emotional eating and type 1 diabetes. I also had gotten remarried. You'd gotten remarried. I blended a family, and I literally thought that it was just, I have so many stressors. I have so many things going on. But when you look at what's going on with our brain, I want to also loop into this discussion, not just all those things where we feel scattered, forgetful, can't find the words. I want to really bring in anxiety and depression also, because we don't know for sure if those symptoms, I personally feel that I had super anxious thoughts, and estrogen really did. When I got the estradiol, I really felt like that helped. Of course, we have to do the lifestyle habits. We have to do the work, the inner work. But I find the same thing. And you starting the community that you have for women who are going through this with type 1 diabetes is exactly why I'm starting my community for people who are going through this and dealing with food issues and dealing with feeling like they can't get control of food, because it isn't just one thing. It has so many layers to it. And so the brain fog, like you said, we may not use those words, people may not mention it, but they don't feel like they're together like they used to be. They kept saying,
Right,
you know, so many women say, wish I could get my stuff together. I had a corporate woman say she was getting up in front of people, having a meeting and having a conversation, and was going through some points. The points were even in front of her, and she couldn't seem to get them out without it sounding so confusing. And I think the word she used was, I felt discombobulated. And I was like, I'm like, wow, that word's great. So as we talk about this, and we know that there's the struggles, we're talking about our own struggles, our clients' struggles, let's kind of talk about what we're personally doing outside of hormone therapy. We feel is a given to look at. Doesn't mean it's a given to do, but it's something that I find really sad when people completely take it off the table and don't explore it. But that's okay. If that's what you end up choosing to do, there are other things, and that's what we wanted to help you with today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Melissa, what are some of the things that you are doing that are making you feel so much better mentally, but also physically?
Yeah, and you know, it goes back to those basic habits. I talk a lot about this with my clients and inside my group, and I try to live it myself. And you know, I always say, especially with diabetes, and even when things are shifting with our hormones, until we can get them dialed in, if we choose to do that with hormone replacement, the basics: staying hydrated, moving my body, lifting heavy weights. Yes, we'd love to lift heavy, don't we, Kim? And you know, challenging ourselves in that way, and having fun. Staying close with my spiritual life and my church community. Those are things, I think those are some nice, really positive layers that I think help to take the stress off of trying to do so much. And it keeps me steady. And obviously, you know, the food, you know, just trying to stay balanced with my diet as well. So as I like to say, I like to stay in control of the things I have control over. So these choices are things we have control over. You know, and sleep is such a big part of it as well. So I prioritize that foundation, and I aim for a A1C that's going to support obviously my blood sugar, my hormones, and my cognitive function. You know, this is something I didn't mention. I mentioned highs and lows before, but when our blood sugar is high and low, there are cognitive things that happen immediately around those episodes, and women with diabetes know what I'm talking about. When you are, and this can happen to anybody, so if you are hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, you can feel disconnected from your body. You can feel lost, confused. You can't see straight in some cases. It affects so many different areas of our, not only what we're doing physically, but really how our body is kind of responding to it. And like I was saying with the high blood sugar, inflammatory. So again, I just focusing on the things I can do the best at every day is really what I've been doing. Another thing I'm trying to do is to read more, to journal more, to use my brain in other capacities, and racket sports. You know, they say things like, you know, any type of racket sports, you know, whether it's table tennis, pickleball. Has anybody heard of pickleball? I don't know. Whatever term. But those are known to help us, because anytime we can spend time doing something that is solely focused on that activity, which is, you know, the hand-eye coordination and all of that. Another thing that I love is dancing. Think about dancing. So if we're on the dance floor and we're having a good time, again, here comes the joy, right? The joy is going to help uplift any sort of maybe frustration that you may have that day or that hour or whatever. But it's going to put your whole body and space into a different mindset. And it takes away from any sort of push or pull on the brain cells. So those are things I'm working on: getting out in nature, more grounding. You know, beach. You know, we're lucky to live by the beach. We have access to it. I need to visit it more, as accessible it is for us here in Florida. But again, I think it's awareness, just knowing that those things do tilt my cognitive abilities to the positive end, a whole lot better and more consistently. And then on top of that, I think obviously hormone replacement, that is something that I'm going to continue to do. So how about you? What are you doing?
We are very similar, and we know that because we talk all the time. We actually, if anybody's used Marco Polo, we video every day if we can't see each other, and do the same things. I actually want to bring up, I have a routine in the morning, and I feel like that's really helped me to create a space for myself. I think when I don't create any time for myself to do the things that I know that are very nurturing to my body, my brain, and just my soul, then the rest of the day gets taken up because we want to help other people. We want to do things for other people. This is our jobs are basically to be there and hold space for other people. So my morning routine is I really, for me personally with my brain, I also have to stay very hydrated. I notice that I become very lethargic. I do use electrolytes sometimes. I don't use them every day, but I can tell when I need to. And I do love my coffee. And we do know that coffee is most beneficial for the brain and the body if we have it over an hour after we wake up. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm a human being, even though I'm a health coach, and I don't wait that long. But that's my goal some days, to be able to wait a little bit longer on the coffee. Working out is so important to both of us. We talk about it all the time. Lifting weights, lifting heavy, that muscle that we are carrying is not just to look good. It's not just to lose weight. It is really there because it's an endocrine organ, which is hormones. And we talk about, throughout this entire episode, we've been talking about hormones because they're ruling us, and lifting weights and movement. And I love that you talk about the beach. I love that you talk about getting out in nature. Walking is free. Walking can happen so easily, and we forget that also balances our blood sugar. It helps us process our day. There's a mental health benefit to walking, and I think it really does sharpen my brain to be outside and walking. It sharpens my brain to do the working out. I think the sleep would not be able to happen, honestly, without the hormone balance, though, with the HRT, because I was lacking sleep for years and years, not just from having children, but I think the perimenopausal track really messed up my sleep. And now that I'm sleeping very well, I feel alert. I feel ready to go. But morning time, I think another thing for me to recognize is morning is my power time. And we've talked about this a lot, Melissa, that morning is our power time. Know when your power time is and do the most cognitively challenging things during your power time. And up until about 1 o'clock, I'm on fire. And then it just kind of starts. I'm not horrible, but it starts to decline. And I don't want to rely on coffee or something in the afternoon. So I just know that those are the tasks that I might be doing that are a little bit lower key, that I don't have to be on fire for. I love that you talk about play and fun. I think laughter and humor is so important. We have to have that lightheartedness. And dancing, I actually got some videos to practice to learn, this is so silly, but shuffle dancing, because the coordination aspect of it is so high and so challenging. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to learn something new, but it's fantastic. Melissa knows I started last year. I started teaching myself Spanish again in Duolingo, and that's been wonderful. I've got a 175-day streak on that right now.
That's
and
awesome.
Then, yes. But in that morning routine, I want to go back to the spirituality again that Melissa mentioned. Doing my devotions and having my God time. Again, the day gets away from me, so that has to happen. And I have a whole new outlook on journaling. Journaling's challenging for me, and a lot of times I don't know how to start. So I've kept my journal with me, and this has actually been, I've mentioned it in other podcasts. It was a tidbit that I got from Raquel from the Functional Moms podcast to keep my journal with me. And when I'm feeling things, good or bad, not just bad, to just jot down some words if I can't come up. I don't do well having to write an essay in my journal. I have to just put some words down.
Yeah.
It could even be a prayer. It could even be a prayer to God. It could be just a conversation. It could just be a pep talk. It could be 2 or 3 words: frustrated, stressed, whatever. So these are
just
some
recognizing.
Things,
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. Just recognizing where we are in that space. I like the fact that you're just carrying it with you, because that takes the stress off. Or, like I've got to do it at 7:15 every morning, which to me that's not authentic with who we are or where we are. So I like that. This came up in our group just this week about journaling, and it's interesting to hear all the ladies kind of give their tidbits about what helps. And some of the things that you just mentioned is how some of them are doing it. Again, take the pressure off. And it doesn't have to be an essay. I love that, because no pressure, right? Just write what you're feeling. Ask some questions. I do the brain dump at the brain dump. I call it the brain dump, but I journal at the end of the night. Not really journaling. It's really just writing down my tasks for the next day. That's what's keeping me on track throughout the week with work, personal appointments and stuff like that. But I think when we can get it off the brain, put it down on paper, you've got it recognized somewhere. That helps, again, free the brain, right? It helps take off that extra layer of stress. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Take the pressure off.
You brought up a really good point.
The last thing that I do want to throw in here just mirrors what Melissa's talking about, because the things that you can control, the women that I'm working with, that you struggle with emotional eating. There's mindless eating that's happening because of root causes. And when you can control things like the workout that is going to help relieve some of the stress or heal some of the things that you're feeling, getting into those emotions, but also how you eat. Again, your power is in the morning. So when you start your day with a really amazing meal, and again, this works for me. I'm not saying that everybody should do it, and I know that we have been hearing online protein, but for me to start the day with a power-packed meal of protein, fruits and veggies, and really start the day without a lot of sugar and processed food, but I don't feel that in the morning. I don't have the emotional eating going on at breakfast. I don't even have it at lunch. It's in the afternoon and evening when my brain is tired and it doesn't want to make decisions. It just wants to go open a bag of something or a box of something and get myself out of the lull. And so everything that we're talking about for cognitive decline, for brain fog and perimenopause, for diabetes is also there to help you really with those eating habits that may be sabotaging you, but it's really because everything needs to go back to that root cause also, and that's where journaling, mindfulness, spirituality, all of that can be really helpful.
Right, being in tune, being more in tune, absolutely. And just having just to be really kind to yourself, I think, through all this, and to recognize that you're not alone. We're here talking about it. Sometimes we're put on a pedestal because we coach others, but we are you. We're going through the same things in many, many instances. So I think that's one of the things that a good takeaway today is just know that you're not alone in this struggle, and there are answers out there. And there's a community out there, I look forward to who's hearing this today and is going to reach out and maybe share, where they are or what they're doing, and, maybe some things that they need some support with.
I think that's so important, giving yourself self-compassion and love. The part of our brain that gets really stressed out, if we don't release that with that self-compassion, it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And it really is anyway. We think that the stress of the brain and the anxiety that may come up with it, we think this is never going to happen again. But when you're prepared and you're doing all the things, when it does, your reaction will be different. And you'll be more lighthearted, more understanding, more compassionate. But we really beat ourselves up as if we've done something wrong or there's something wrong with us. And that was the self-doubt I was talking about before, when my poor client was up in front of all those people and so embarrassed. And when I've been up in front of a classroom or in front of friends and having these conversations, you are so not alone. We are in it with you. So many other women are in it with you. And it's not a forever situation. But please know that if there is an opportunity for you, whether it's genetics or lifestyle up to this point, for dementia and Alzheimer's, there are so many ways that you can really slow that process down. But we have to do it now. We can't wait till our 70s.
Yeah.
We really have to start doing it now. It's not too late, even in your 70s and 80s, to make changes. But if you're in your 40s and 50s right now, 60s, this is a beautiful time to do this and start really getting your brain in gear. And I didn't even talk about this one thing. I love doing puzzles all the time. And I'm very lucky because after teaching math, I tutor math. So I'm always going to have that going on. But, you know, if you love little puzzles that you think are indulgent and you're feeling guilty because you're spending time playing Sudoku or you're doing the New York Times little crossword puzzles and stuff, just know that you are actually doing yourself a service and give yourself some love, because maybe you also need to do that because you need a break.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and we're making deposits in that bank, you know, because we know, you know, whether it's the same day or the same year, you know, we're going to reap rewards for, you know, for doing those things. Sudoku is one that I still have to get into. So when we get off this call today, this recording, I'm going to look into that because that's been on my to-do list to check out. Again, we're always looking for ways to stimulate the brain in other ways. And we actually have a dance coming up. We're going to a community dance here where we live this weekend. So we'll get together with some friends, get out on the dance floor, and have some fun. So
I love that.
Seek it out. Yeah, seek it out. Wow. Start with something, right? Just start. Yeah.
Well, Melissa, thank you for hanging out with me today. This is actually a double benefit because we get to hang out together and talk. And I think that, you know, not to go through all the points, you can go back and listen, and we're both going to be posting about this for you. But I think the overall message is that we really want you to not only love yourself, but know you have some control.
Yeah, just to validate you. And, you know, another thing that I kind of popped up is that we think our identity is changing, that we're less of, that we're weaker, that this is the way it's going to be from now on, and know that that's not true. Just know that that's not true. Yeah.
Yes.
These are some things that you can work on, and sooner the better, right?
Yeah. And everything that we mentioned today is what we would be helping women with on so many different levels, coming to us asking for help. When people say, you know, when I say, if I could wave a magic wand, what would you want? And they list everything from feeling better about themselves, you know, leveling out their hormones, working on their blood sugar, losing weight. All of this applies.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does.
Well, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you being here today. And
yes, we hope everybody got value from what we discussed today. Yeah, and this is just the beginning of it. Usually, like you say, we'd love for you all to share this episode with somebody that needs to hear it. If you have another lady in your life, that friends, mothers, sisters that really need to hear this, to feel validated and to feel like they're not going through this alone. So, and please reach out to us too online. And
yes, Melissa, what's your handle on Instagram?
I am at Blood Sugar Boss.
And I am at Kim Hines Health. And check out the show notes because all of our links will be in there.
Absolutely.
You can check out the communities, and who knows, maybe we'll get to see you again. Maybe you'll come hang out with our groups.
Absolutely. That'd be fun. Okay.
Thank you,
Until
Melissa.
Next time.
Yes,
everybody
everyone,
have a beautiful day.
Have a great day and give yourself grace.